Hello, this is Kim Ades from Frame of Mind Coaching, and you have just joined the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast. Today we're doing a little something different. Rather than me interviewing a guest, we are turning the tables, and I have a good friend, my business coach, Jeff Moore, joining me today, and he will be actually interviewing me for a change. So Jeff, welcome. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for joining us. I'm super excited about this.
Wonderful. I love it. I'm happy to interact with you and have people get a sense of what you do and how you do it that I deeply have, and I think more people should understand.
So maybe we should kind of tell people about our unique arrangement, because I don't have this arrangement with any other person ever. It's not only that you are my business coach, but I coach you as well. So we've created a relationship where we have a bit of a trade going on. So you do have a unique insight into what I do and how I do it. So I'm happy for you to kind of help me share that with people.
Yep, I love that. And maybe we should start at the beginning, because we first met when I went to one of your presentations.
Right.
And my initial reaction was, wow, Kim has codified and explained and systematized some stuff that I kind of had going on in the back of my mind. And I was so attracted to that kind of professionalization and practical use of ideas that I had rolling around in my head. So that was what originally made me reach out and say, let's talk, let's get to know each other and see what comes of it. And, I'll just give my mini version of Frame of Mind, and I'd like you to expound upon that and talk about it. So the way I see it is, you've made an important discovery or model about how things work. And that model, in my simple terms, are beliefs drive actions, actions drive results, and a lot of us are unaware of those beliefs. So if we could reverse engineer that, we could change everything, right? So that's my vision, or my model of what I understand you do. Please tell me about that, and am I right, am I wrong, how's that work?
You're right, but let me kind of give a little bit more color and flavor to that model. So it's a little bit more elaborate, but only slightly. So the way that it works is that we all have thoughts, and they pop in and out of our brains. But the thoughts that we have over and over again then form our beliefs. And here's the thing, is that our beliefs come from all over the place. And they come from our upbringing, they come from the media, they come from our friends, they come from our experiences that inform us in certain ways. But we have these beliefs, and a lot of those beliefs, interestingly enough, are very unknown to us. They're unconscious. They live beneath the surface. So we have these beliefs, and we're not even aware of what those beliefs are. Those beliefs drive our expectations. And as we build expectations, our expectations drive certain behaviors. And sometimes those expectations prevent us from behaving in ways that we know will lead us to the results we want. So they really have a huge influence over what we do and what we don't do, which ultimately drives our results. So it's all those pieces together that create the model. And so when we coach people, we want to understand what they think, what they believe to be true, what they expect, and how they behave in order for us to understand the results they're getting. And all the time, every time people come for coaching, because there's some result that they're experiencing in their lives, whether it's a relationship, a business problem, a personal issue, whatever, a lack of confidence, whatever it is that they're feeling, that is driven by these other four factors. And we do want to decompose them and understand, what is the source of this frustration? And let's kind of back up for a minute. The philosophy or the premise is that each individual has control over very few things. So as a person, I have control over what I think, what I feel, and what I do. And we don't have control over a lot of other things, especially in this time. Like there are so few things we actually have control over. So my goal as a coach is to really empower, or to give control to my clients over what they do have control over, rather than helping them try to control what's really out of their control.
That sounds extremely powerful to me. And not only that, but for the reasons you said, but also because when I feel powerful, then I see more options than when I don't feel powerful. So even though the external world is the same, my internal feelings affect what I can see in the outside world. Does that make sense?
That's 100% right. So when we feel a lack of confidence, when we feel disappointed, angry, frustrated, when we feel any of those negative feelings, what happens is literally we siphon off options. We can't see them. And we don't believe, that word is really important, that they are accessible to us, right? So even if we understand that they exist out there, we don't believe that we can have them, we deserve them, that we can leverage them, right? And so
Yeah.
what we definitely want to do is increase options by addressing the beliefs that close off those options.
Okay. So this makes a lot of sense to me that the model is good, right? And
Amazing.
it drives the value. Knowing the model, what do we do about it? In other words, how do we access those beliefs? How do we start to interact with those thoughts? The model is a great foundation. Now what?
So what we do when we coach people is we access beliefs. We sort of understand patterns of thought, patterns of belief, patterns of behaviors, and really try to get at how a person is wired. So we're piecing things together. The way we do that is we have coaching calls on a regular basis, and we record every call, and we ask our clients to listen to the recording so that they can start to gain a sense of awareness of how they show up. They can start to listen to the stories they tell. They can start to identify some of their own beliefs. They can start to pay attention to where they get emotionally triggered and where they keep falling into the same traps over and over again. The second thing we do is we ask our clients to journal in a private and secure online journal with their coach. And so what happens is they're given a journaling question or a prompt at the beginning of the week, and they start journaling, and their journal gets shared with their coach. And every journal that is received by a coach, the coach is reading and responding to the journal by asking questions, by probing, by commenting, by understanding how a person thinks, how a person sees the world, what the person values, how a person operates. And really, as a coach, my job is to really get to those patterns of beliefs and bring them to the surface and show them to the client to say, hey, here's what you believe to be true, and that belief contradicts your goal. They don't go together. We need to make an adjustment. We need to address that belief in order for you to easily and naturally engage in behavior that will allow you to reach your goals.
So this sounds like there's lots of accessible tools. So we start out in a state where we're in our head, and we're so in our head that we don't know we're in our head.
Exactly.
And then how does one escape that? I used a phrase with a friend of mine I used to talk to about his situation, that you, my friend I'm talking about, are in a paper mache prison. And unfortunately, you're trying to break out with paper mache tools, right? And that analogy helped him understand that he did have more power than he realized. And what I'm hearing from you is a few things. One, start to observe things. Two, as you talk about things, as you write about things, you're opening up possibilities, because even without coach's help, you can read your own words later when you're in a different mental state,
Yes.
right? And then you add on to it somebody who's an outsider that can ask questions and make observations and engage in a conversation. You're upping the game. You're making everything more effective. And even if I were to write down my thoughts and look at them later in 3 or 4 different mental states, whatever my blind spots are, they're still blind spots, right? So bring in somebody who doesn't have the same blind spots, and we see more things.
So you're 100% right. The idea is to dramatically increase, we like to work with leaders, the awareness of leaders and how their thinking impacts the outcomes that they're experiencing, the outcomes of their team, the outcomes of sales, the outcome, everything they hear, see, smell, and touch. How does a leader's thinking impact the outcomes they're experiencing? And before we can really understand that, we need to dramatically increase awareness. So you're absolutely right with that. The second piece of it is not only does journaling help to bring thoughts on paper and separate a person's thoughts from themselves so that those thoughts can be looked at and examined and deciphered. So yes, you can go back and look at your journal, but when you do it with someone who is skilled at reading journals and identifying quickly what those core driving beliefs are, what's happening is you're moving at a much, much, much more rapid pace. You're moving through this more quickly, and you're that interception, you, if you will, prevents you from continuously falling into the same traps.
Okay, so this sounds like it would be transformational for certain people in certain situations. Was that a good word to use?
It's transformational for people who want to engage with the process. So it's not situationally specific. It
Okay.
is individually specific when a person is willing to do that self-reflection.
So I imagine over the course of doing this for many years, some clients have made some major breakthroughs. Is there any,
Unbelievable.
yeah, is there any kind of things you can tell us about breakthroughs that might happen from this kind of work?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the breakthroughs we see are dramatic changes in business results. So it could be that a person is running a company and they're stuck at a certain plateau. And what they start to realize is that they are the creators of that bottleneck or that plateau. And their beliefs have prevented growth. And so once we address that, what happens is dramatic growth, or the ability to hire the right person, or the ability to connect with the right client, or the ability to connect with a person who can facilitate rapid growth or financial well-being. So we see that. On a more personal level, we also see a change in relationships. So a lot of people come to us who have a frustration in their relationships, whether it's business relationships or personal relationships. We find that leaders, have certain expectations of others, or have a certain level of drive and ambition and passion, and they feel frustrated that other people don't see the world the same way as they do. And the minute that we help leaders address their beliefs and see things a little bit differently, their relationships smooth out, even out, ease up. And so we're seeing change on all kinds of levels, both personally and professionally.
So I have some friends, a lot of friends who own businesses, run businesses, are very driving type of personality. And one thing I've noticed that a few of them have had, number one, at work, my word is law. People do what I say. They don't give me any pushback. And I am taking a lot of responsibility. And then I come home and two things are happening. Number one, I'm done. I've used up all my energy. And I have somebody at home who now wants me in a different capacity. And I both feel drained, and I also, my natural pattern of behavior is to tell everybody what to do. So this can lead to all sorts of friction. Have
Right.
you encountered that in any of your clients, anything like that?
Of course, I've encountered a lot of things. And what we try to do is go back to basic values. So I remember I had one client who had he successful at work, would come home and his wife would nag at him, right? Like, and she would want him to do things like even the dishes, just something simple. And he would be tired and annoyed and he'd say, yeah, I'll do it, and not get to it. And so we went to a basic concept, which was the concept of integrity. Keep your word. If you can't keep your word, don't make that your word, right? And so the relationship started to shift, but also with the belief of like, let's see, how are relationships built? How is trust built? How would you like someone to be treating you? And are you behaving up to your own standards of behavior? So from where are you operating? What values are you putting forward? And are they consistent with your behavior? And so what he noticed in that case was like a disconnect, cognitive dissonance, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he noticed that he wanted certain things, but his behavior wasn't in alignment with what he actually wanted, not for himself as a person, not for himself as a leader, and not for himself as a husband. And so a little tweak caused a massive change.
So if somebody is watching this podcast right now, or this interview right now, how do they know that their particular situation is something that you could help with, or that the frame of mind methodology could help with?
So, you know what, again, it's not situationally contingent because we all have different situations and we're all dealing with them differently. Really, the question is, how are you, like, how do you feel? Are you frustrated? Are you annoyed? Are you disappointed in yourself? Do you look at yourself and say, oh my God, like I'm working so hard and I'm not making progress, or I'm not making the kind of progress that I expected to be making or should be making at this point, given the effort? It's the emotional state of frustration, disappointment, agitation, impatience. That's the key. If you look at yourself and say, yeah, I feel all those things, then that's the indicator that says your thinking is driving that experience. And that's where you say, I might need to look for some extra help.
Okay, so somebody who's listening to this is frustrated, disappointed, not happy with where they're at, the progress they've made. I mean, that's practically the definition of an entrepreneur, right? Among other things. Uh, they have a vision of a different world and they're putting their all into making that world. And they're not there yet. So it's a frustrating experience for part of the way. What's their first step? Do they start to journal? Do they do a quiz? How do they shift a little bit to start this?
So one of the things that we like to do is we like to ask people to consider a couple of questions and we want them to journal. So here are the two journaling questions we typically ask people to work on. Question number one is, what is it that I really, really want? It's very interesting to find that a lot of people get stuck just right there. But what do I really want? Write it all down. Why do I want it? What's it going to make me feel once I have it? All those things. So just write that out. And then the second question is, what is preventing me from having that right now? Like, what's really getting in the way? And write down all the reasons. And that's a great starting point, because what we notice is that the reasons you write down are a reflection of or cover up the underlying beliefs that drive the way you feel. And so very often we invite people to submit those two journaling responses to us so that we can create that as a starting point to see what's actually happening, what's actually preventing you from living the life you want, having the relationships you want, building the business you want, being the kind of leader you want. What's getting in the way? Now, a lot of people identify circumstantial issues as their reason for not doing what they want or getting the results they're looking for. And we know we've been coaching people for nearly 2 decades, that circumstances are not the driver of results, right? Leadership thought, the way a leader thinks, is the driver.
Okay, so let me see if I got that right. Journal on 2 questions. What do I really, really want in various forms? And what is preventing that? Journal. Set that journal aside, come back and look at it. Is this circumstantial? Is this, etc.? Journal, look. Eventually, if I don't make progress, start to share the journal with somebody who can help create perspective.
Yes. And really, when you look at the reasons why you don't have what you want, ask yourself a question. What do I believe to be true?
What do I believe to be true?
What do I believe to be true? And are those beliefs real? Are they true? Are they, in fact, reality? So if, for example, someone says, well, I can't get to where I want to go because I don't have the money, then the question is, what is the belief? The belief is, I don't have access to money. I don't think anybody will give me money. I don't know that I'm worth anybody investing in me. So now we're talking. Now we're getting to core beliefs that we really need to challenge.
Okay. So at the moment, we are in a unsettled time where a lot of what used to work doesn't work, where a lot of what we used to rely on isn't there anymore. And there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty, both in terms of physical health and in terms of economic capability. Yep. How does that impact things? Does it just turn up the volume on everybody's fears, or what happens?
Well, yes, absolutely. People's fears are in some ways very, very real. And, there is a very interesting situation going on out there. But does that mean we cannot still thrive? Some people are thriving, even in this circumstance and situation. So the question is, like, why? Why are some people able to thrive? And then if thriving is a possibility, what do I need to tap into? How do I need to be thinking? What do I need to be able to be true, right? What do I need to believe in order for me to thrive too? How do I need to see this? How do I need to look at this perhaps as an opportunity as opposed to a real threat? So
Yeah.
my thinking is 100% responsible for my ability to tap into thriving as opposed to, you know,
So there are
fear
definitely
and
people that are thriving, and there's people that aren't, but there's also people that could be thriving and would be thriving with different beliefs and different awareness.
yes,
And that's the ones that we really want to make a transformational difference for.
yes,
Somebody who has the awareness that there is opportunity and there is the ability to respond. And I'm guessing the answer to this is the same questions. What do I want and what's preventing me? And we start from there in this situation.
yes. Now, a lot of people will say, well, look, you know, the circumstances of today are preventing me from having what I want. And yes, that is true if we continue to think or believe that the only way to get what we want is to go back to what used to be. But perhaps there's a new way. Perhaps there's a new avenue. Perhaps there are new doors that need to be tapped on and opened, right? So what are the beliefs that say, well, you know, there's nothing out there beyond what is now?
Yes. And clearly, the more I think there is a future for me, the more I see the steps to make that future.
Yes, yes. And the more easily we position ourselves to tap into the opportunity that is right in front of us. So there are so many opportunities in front of us all the time. They're coming at us almost a million miles a minute. But if we're closed off to them, we see none of them. If we don't believe they're there, it's like looking into a black room. We don't see what's in front of us. And that's the issue. The issue is to help people see the opportunity first by helping them believe that they're even in front of them. You can't see what you're not looking for, right? Like it's hard.
Yeah.
So, right?
And actually, some problems go from unsolvable to solvable simply by knowing there's a solution. Like, I don't know the solution, but I know there is one. That makes the difference in finding the solution.
100%. That's exactly right. It's the difference. It's the difference between hopeless and hopeful.
Right, which is another way of saying the difference between, the more powerful I feel, the more I see choices and options.
That's right. And the more I'm at peace with where things are, the more I'm accepting of the current circumstance, then the more able I am to look beyond the circumstance and see what opportunity lies in front of me.
Right. So I'd also like to explore a little bit the power of just the coaching relationship, which is to say, my clients, almost universally, my clients are very successful and have achieved a level of success that I can't coach myself to. I need my own coach to get where I need to go. So that becomes it's hard to overstate the importance of external perspective on what's going on. And I think that bears out in the fact that I'm helping you get perspective, right? So there's nobody immune from needing some outside observation, perspective, discussion. And that's a very, very empowering thing. Would you like to speak about how you've experienced that from the inside? Like how does external perspective help you?
So yeah, I mean, we all have beliefs that get in our way, even the most evolved people, right? Like we all have beliefs that we can't see, that are, let's call them our blind spots. We all have experiences that paint a picture for us or taint our view of the world. We all have influences or inputs that help us see the world a certain way that maybe limit our capacity to see bigger and better and broader. And so accessing that third party perspective is super important. But I want to go back to something you said, which was the relationship, the coaching relationship. So for me, from my perspective, the relationship is really the critical component in coaching. It's what helps a client get from where they are to where they want to be. Because look, I coach you, Jeff, but if you didn't trust me, we wouldn't be going anywhere, right? You just like create a block and that would be it. You wouldn't share what's going on. You wouldn't be open. You wouldn't expose some of your struggles or your vulnerabilities. And there would be that's it. Like, you'd put a spoke in that wheel and we wouldn't move forward. So for me, the relationship is critical. And oftentimes in coaching relationships, the idea is I coach you and we have an arm's length relationship, right? Because I'm the coach and I need to establish boundaries. And that's how typical coaching works. For me, I believe that my job is to tear down boundaries. My job is to build the relationship of trust so that we can take a journey together. And that actually, when I coach you, yes, my goal is to help you reach your goals, but in the relationship, you have an influence on me. Mm-hmm. And as such, it's my job to share your influence. It's my job to expose you to the kind of influence that you have on others, right? And so from my perspective, how do we build a relationship between a coach and a client that is extraordinary, that takes us to a whole other place? And that is A, through frequency of contact, and B, it's through depth, right? So when you're journaling with me, we're communicating regularly, but also we get to a very deep place fast because I'm exposed to what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing, what you're seeing, what you're sensing on a day-to-day basis. And so that frequency and depth of contact are the critical pieces that allow us to move to a new place fairly quickly.
That's very exciting. And of course, as you were talking about it, I'm thinking, human beings in general thrive collectively. Like nobody builds their own life out of nothing. We're interdependent, and being aware of our own capabilities, our own driving factors and so on, and the people around us, that's also part of the recipe of thriving, is kind of relating to the community in a powerful way.
Yes, and we know, like from research, that the people who thrive the most, if we look at their lives, what's the key element that helps people thrive? It's their relationships, it's their connection with others, and it's their sense of meaning and purpose. And so guess what? When I coach someone else, they instantly play a role and have meaning and purpose in my life. And they need to know that.
That's great. That's very inspiring.
It's a bit of a different view of things, right?
Yeah. So if somebody's like not thriving, what's the first thing they do, or the second thing, or what? If somebody's listening to this and wants some help, they journal. What do they do? What's their very next step?
I mean, we're very happy to help them. And you know what? Take those 2 journaling questions and send them to me. And I will connect you with a coach or even respond directly myself. Kim at frameofmindcoaching.com. Send me your journaling questions. Let's start there. And let's at least get you some help. Maybe coaching is or isn't for you. It doesn't really matter. We're happy to have a conversation and just explore what's going on for you right now.
Okay. How does this relate to some of the people that are most stressed out by this? The healthcare workers, the grocery store clerks, etc.
Well, I think it relates to everybody. They're in the thick of it, and they also need support. They need emotional support, mental support. They need support. And while there is a lot of outward support for them, like I just saw in the news in Montreal, everybody stood outside clapping. There was a parade of honkers, just giving support. And that's awesome. However, they might need a little more support than that. They might need a little bit of internal support. They might need help to really address their fears and help them navigate through some of the decisions they're making. And so support on a much more personal level might be appropriate. So in cases like that, we invite people to come and just talk to us, talk to one another, start writing down what you feel, what you're experiencing, what your fears are, what your hopes are. Start writing. You know, one of the things that we invite people to do is join a group coaching program where you have a community of people who are journaling together and sharing some of their experiences. So that's another thing that might be useful, and it's fairly affordable.
Very nice. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share about what you're doing or how you're responding to this, the world we're living in now?
I do. I want to say one thing is that oftentimes when we are not getting the results we want, when we are not experiencing the life we want, or living the life of our dreams, the first question we ask ourselves is, what am I doing wrong? What can I be doing differently? And that word doing is a bit of a trick. It's a bit of a trap. And what I want to encourage you to ask yourself, rather than examining all the things you could be doing differently, ask yourself, how am I thinking about this? And how is my thinking leading to the outcomes that I'm getting? So first we think, then we do. And oftentimes we skip the examination of thought and just completely go and try to change the doing. Except that if our thinking doesn't change and only our doing changes, we don't get the outcomes we're looking for. So we need to make a little bit of a shift in our thinking first before examining the change in action. So that's a really big idea that I want to share with people.
Yeah, I've seen that in action myself. I've had friends who their internal thought patterns are clearly in their way. And the first one that really I got into that with, his thought patterns were so negative that he was suffering just from his internal thoughts. And that turned out, ironically, to be the important factor, because I think if his suffering was a little less, he would have lived with it. But it was so much that he was like, I'm willing to do anything at all to change this. And eventually he did, very, very powerfully.
Yeah. So, and you said the word suffer. Most suffering comes from our thinking. That's where suffering comes from. And so, yeah, I mean, my goal in life is definitely to just help people live with greater ease, peace, exhilaration, and joy at the end of the day. Yes, reach your goals, but do it in such a way where you enjoy the journey, enjoy the process.
That's pretty awesome. And I so relate to how many people are, sort of suffering from, I sometimes call it self-torture. Maybe not conscious self-torture, but still self-torture.
That's exactly what it is. It's self-torture.
And what a relief it is to figure out a way to stop doing that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know how much time we have. I think we probably wrap up. We covered a lot of territory.
Yes. Jeff, thank you so much for spending this time with me, for asking me the questions. It's been nice. I'm happy to have had the opportunity to share some of my process, some of my thoughts, some of the ways that we do what we do. And thank you for being my coach, and thank you for trusting me to be yours.
Yes, it's a strong relationship that's led wonderful places, and I'm glad we're carrying it on. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you.